How you doing, guys? Welcome to today's video. Just quickly, we're going to go through a bit of color balance and how to use presets and how that can help speed up your workflow, and a little bit about my preset that I use for this photograph here. So let's get into it. So this is a photograph I took last week. This week? Last week? Yeah, last week. At a photo walk in Aarhus around the city lights, using just light we had available to us. So really pushing our cameras to the limit with the ISOs, with our our shutter speeds, and using fast lenses. Now this image actually came out really nice. It is very warm, as we can see here, but it did end up coming out very nice. And essentially what we did to start this is I applied a preset. Now I've made a preset for this night, and by going through and doing some color correction, which I'm going to break down for you right now. So I'm going to hit this preset button, and we're going to get along the track. Bam. So this preset here was quite simple. We started with this here, and we ended with this here. What I found, right, was that when we, I'm going to actually click on this button here. It's going to export it back to what it was, and I'm going to show you the settings. So this is where we started. Our temperature was quite high. It was 3750. Tungsten light, which is this orange light you see in the cities, is 3200 naturally. That's the standard for it. That's what your camera will set for white balance. So we need to bring that down. Okay, so none of these have been adjusted. This is just raw out of the camera, and the white balance is off, terribly off. So all I've done here is pop it down. I've dragged down our white balance to 2800, which is below 3200. If we go to 3200, you can see it's still a bit too warm. So it's down at 2800. I give it a light correction with the highlights and the whites to just bring sort of her cheeks and the where the light has fallen from the lights above onto here. We've got a bit of shadow here, but actually I quite like it. You could fix this up if you wanted to, but I like the way that the natural light has softened the shadows around here. She's got little highlights all over her jacket. It's actually a really good shot for me as a photographer. This is the sort of shots you want to get, because there's lots of little details there, lots of things that are exciting and separate from the background. I've desaturated the image a little bit. As you can see here, if we go to full, right, it's still a bit, it's orange and it's not very nice. And that's due to my HSL, which is our color sliders here, being played with drastically. So we're going to go through that now. So once you've color corrected this image, so once you've edited your image for the exposure in here, don't just leave this for now. You need to go into your HSL section in here, right? And you can see there's all these you play around in here with all these settings. There's lots of different settings. This is a pretty standard preset of mine. I use this style a lot. A lot of these HSLs are very similar all the way through, and I adjust them accordingly for the night or for what lights are in the background. So starting off with our hue, you can really play around with the skin tones. So if we were to reset these, you can see that it's a little bit different. There's a little bit of difference to the redness of her face. She's a little bit more yellow, I guess you could say, and some of the lights in the background are being played with. So I've just adjusted that slightly to better suit my style. The greens, as you can see, are not really in the image at all, so you can slide them up and down all day. Won't do too much. There's not much green in here. There's a lot of blues. We can see them on the outside changing. They're going from purple to aqua. I like the soft neutral sort of blue. I guess it's kind of like a dark sky blue. And the same with our purples. There's a few purples just in the edges here that, again, I like to make them a little more blue. It's just I like blue. I love blue. Blue everything. If I could wear blue all day, I would, but it doesn't look very good on me. So then we go into our saturation. Now, you've got to be careful in this area. You can really overdo an image. And if you're a photographer that likes a subtle style of post-production, you got to be really careful in here. So I've adjusted the orange in her face just to bring a bit more life into her face, because it was if we drop that too far, she kind of gets a bit ghostish. And no one really likes looking a bit pale. It's winter here, but you've got to make sure there's a bit of life in the skin. Everyone's got it. Photos sometimes make you look ghostly, and nothing you can do about that, but it might be the light. But we can do something about that in post-production. So all I've really done here is just played with her skin tones, mainly. Dropped a bit of here in a bit of the blues and saturation just to take away from the image. I don't want them popping too much in the image because that's not the focus. If you're doing light, you might bump it up. But because our subject is a person, we don't want too many of these in-your-face lights grabbing people's attention. And the lastly thing is the luminance. Now what this does, and I'm going to show you by just by dragging this up, you can see this tone, the oranges, are affected here. So it's adjusting all this in here. It's just adjusting the tones and I guess you could say they're highlights and they're whites of that area. It shifts the whole lot up actually, but I mainly use it as a highlighting tool. So I bumped that up. Let's go. I bumped it at 10 because I didn't want it too high, because if you go up too high, we start to lose a bit of a bit in the lights up here. And I like having the lights. What have I done? I liked having the lights. Yeah, I've broken it. They're great. Cool. Yeah, so I like having the lights. There we go. Well, I like having the lights a bit subtler on her face. And once you've done this, you've really kind of covered the color correction side of things. As we can see here, this is not actually where I finished. I'm going to show you what I did further as a little extra on the side here. I applied a split tone, as you can see here, just as a little bit of a blue, just to cool the image down. A great little trick is using blue here on this, and this just affects your highlights and your shadows. And if you move this slide up and down, you can see it's very subtle. It's just affecting the image slightly. And then you just leave it where you want to leave it. I like to more towards my shadows, because I don't like my whites having a color cast on them. I like the blue on the dark. It's much more subtle. What I did after that was where are we going here? I started playing with with the highlights a bit. We adjusted using some where have they gone? It's disappeared. Okay. We've adjusted using some brush tools. I've just whitened her teeth. If we can turn this off, I've really pulled her out. So I've just whitened her teeth a little bit here, just in there. I've applied a bit of clarity to her eyes and desaturated them a little bit so they're a bit more white. And over the entire subject, I've just increased the highlights very subtly, just enough to pop her from the image. And that's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to go through and brush in here and brush in there and smooth all the skin. You don't need to do that, especially not for street photography. Maybe for fashion, maybe you got to fix a pimple up or a blemish, or there's a bit of a light, box from someone's, light that wasn't supposed to be there. Definitely do that if you want. And if you're shooting someone who has got a pimple that's popped up for the day, and that no one likes having pimples, take it off. But generally, you don't need to smooth the skin out too much, because it adds character. She's got actually a very, very lovely complexion, very, very lovely skin. And it just works, and it adds to the image. There's a little bit of texture in her skin here, some freckles. It's perfect. It adds to the whole image. So for me, I leave this alone. But really, guys, I hope you've learned a little bit today. If you've got some questions, please do drop them in the comments below, or message me. I think most of you got access to me on Facebook. But yeah, do play around with your colors. Play around with your H2L sliders. They're important. See you next time.